Greetings. This is a really serious week as you head in towards the debate with governments about sustainability, about the future of the planet. Then we know that workers, decent work, social protection, fair wages and collective bargaining must be at the heart of that. Our commitment to sustainability is about the environment. That's a moral imperative. But within that context, when the world has to deliver 50% more food, 45% more energy and 30% more water just to serve the population by 2050, there are real opportunities for jobs, jobs and jobs. In this critical period, jobs are our core business. Greener jobs, new jobs, existing industries. Our research demonstrates it's possible. We also want a social protection floor, our social justice agenda. The poverty in the world must be eliminated. And of course, we want those who can afford to pay. The bankers have got off scot-free. We've bailed them out, and now we want them to pay just a small fraction. And financial transactions tax, the FTT, one way they can make a contribution to the global agenda. So green jobs, financial transactions tax, a social protection floor, and of course support for our NGO colleagues on issues like food and energy security. That's the mandate. Here at the Trade Union Assembly, you're going to talk about magnificent contributions that you've made, and I look forward to discussing those with you in the days to come.
In 2008, Wall Street had $6.9 trillion wiped off its value, and world unemployment grew by over 5 million people. Unemployment now stands at over 259 million people, and it's still rising. Without timely action on urgent environmental problems, many more jobs could be lost due to resource depletion, biodiversity loss, and natural disasters. Our climate is changing. It is caused by global warming produced by human activity, and its effects are being felt around the world. The most vulnerable people are in general the poor, since they have less capacity to adapt and their livelihoods are often dependent of resources that are linked to climate. The ILO estimates that there are around 270 million chemical-related occupational accidents and 160 million work-related diseases each year among a global workforce of 2.8 billion people. Laura Murillo from Sustain Labour says, "If you have a workforce that is aware of the dangers involved, that knows how to minimise the risks and encourage procedures that are less damaging, then you have a workforce that can lead a radical change for the positive." In 2011, the Blue-Green Alliance and its labour and environmental partners released a policy on green schools and environmental education, which provides a blueprint for reauthorisation of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and focuses on the benefits we can achieve by greening our school facilities, such as energy savings, and on educating our kids about the environment they live in by increasing their engagement with the natural environment through outdoor experiential learning. In Uruguay, waste collectors are coming out of marginalisation and demanding decent and green jobs. Promoting sound waste management, calling for national policy changes, selective collection, productive use of waste and involving their fellow citizens in the reduction and sorting of waste at the source are some of the objectives of the PIT-CNT campaign. The campaign is an example of how workers organise toward raising their political voice, demanding recognition and dignifying the vital work that they do, which makes important social, economic and ecological contributions, such as mitigating global warming. Through the campaign, workers are encouraging the incorporation of civil society organisations in the sustainable management of solid waste in order to promote a change in national waste policy. Truck drivers in Uganda have launched a campaign to better understand the changes taking place around them. They often transport dangerous cargo, a risk to their health and the environment. Some of the objectives of the campaign carried out by the ATGWU Uganda are knowing more about what is being transported, how to manage waste, and calling for occupational health and safety and environment committees. In Buenos Aires, the local construction trade union carries out training for all members in energy efficiency in the construction industry. This initiative has huge potentials in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and to create decent jobs in the process. Some 4 million green jobs based on improving energy efficiency already exist in the United States, as well as in a number of European countries. Daniel Heredia, UOCRA Argentina, says, "Renewable energy is the future. Education has to be a constant, especially for the workers, so that they can have a tool to adapt, nourish their skills, and create more job opportunities. One always has to be prepared for change, even if it is a change of 180 degrees." Workers' participation and collective bargaining can help greening the workplaces. FGTB in Belgium has been collecting testimonies from workers in many different sectors and publicised the video on their website. Each worker relates their work and industry to the environmental and sustainable agenda. The TUC in the UK has launched a new Green Workplaces network for union green reps and activists. Membership is free and allows you access to tips and resources, the latest news and events, along with details of training courses and workshops. You can download these studies from other union activists who are taking action on green issues in their workplace and send in your own stories and comments. The German Alliance for Work and the Environment is an example of how the fight against climate change can become a successful economic opportunity when tackled in a bigger alliance. Werner Schneider, Confederation of German Trade Unions, says, "There are already 1.8 million people working in the environmental sector, and that means that if you compare it, you will find that there are more people working than in the whole German automotive industry." Not only will oil consumption go down with 80%, CO2 emissions will also go down by 80%. You will also feel that heating costs have gone down with 80%, and this they will all feel in their wallets because they will have to pay only 20% of what they paid before. German trade unions created a program to renovate existing buildings by energy saving and energy efficiency measures, like improving installation and installing advanced heating technologies. To make it possible, they created an alliance with the government, environmental NGOs, and employers' federations. So far, 300,000 flats have been renovated, creating around 200,000 jobs and an estimated reduction in CO2 emissions of 1 billion tonnes. Since 2003, at Sustain Labour, we have been working hard to overcome the false labour-environment dichotomy. How can we strengthen the labour dimension of the change towards a more sustainable development and economy? How can we create an economic and development model that creates quality jobs and protects the environment? And how can we ensure that trade union organisations, which have been fundamental actors in securing greater equity, greater equality, greater justice, and greater democracy, can also play a role in the defence of the environment? We have actively been working to put this into practice and, for example, have trained unionists from 75 countries to help them to better understand the challenges. We have promoted dialogue with other social actors and helped build alliances. We produced research to guide decision-making, and we have accompanied the international trade union movement in negotiations. ACTU in Australia has been doing a lot of work around green jobs in Australia. The country is well positioned to become a leader in the global green economy in order to generate 1 million jobs in 6 key industries. The success of Australia becoming a leader in the $6 trillion global green economy depends on Australian consumers, business using green material, and strong policies from the leaders. Clean energy jobs can be created, and in this video we can see the development of bioplastic made from cornstarch instead of oil. This bioplastic can be broken down in compost and can also be dissolved in water. Brendan Morris, the CEO of this company, explains, "We employ 45 people in Australia and another 8 outside Australia. This clean technology is Australian, and so are the jobs in the Melbourne factory." Union members, Occupy protesters, and the American Confederation, AFL-CIO, have been campaigning for a passage of a Robin Hood tax, a financial transactions tax. The nurses in New York have been particularly active. A tax would allow the government to have more money for infrastructure and put more Americans back to work. One of the nurses says, "We are the people that live from paycheck to paycheck. There is no cushion to fall back on." Another nurse says, "Congress needs to do the job they were voted in to do." In the town of Webuye in western Kenya, in 2008, the main employer in the region, Pan Paper Mill, shut down and 1,500 people were out of work. Local affiliates of the BWI, the Building and Woodworkers Union, are encouraging a forestry program as a solution. The program set up water springs and a comprehensive forestry initiative to provide seedlings, stabilize water resources, support reforestation efforts, and transform the community's outlook in the process. Bigeti Wanakacha says, "I happen to be a mathematics teacher, so if you apply mathematics, you can see that even if it takes 10 years, what you can get from a tree is much more than what you can get from an acre of sugarcane or whatever. Any piece of land that I buy is going to be planted with trees." 32 families in the village have gone from paper mill employees to forestry entrepreneurs who now share a very different vision of the importance of their environment and its role in the fight against climate change. Both Nepal and Indonesia have large forestry industries that play an important role within the geopolitical, economic, and climate change context. The Indonesian Forestry and Allied Workers Union, FSP Kahundito, organizes over 100,000 workers mainly in the woodworking, forestry, plantation, and pulp and paper sectors. It is committed to fighting climate change and deforestation. In the framework of RED, Kahutindo has held conferences on green and decent work in the forestry sector. It has done specific studies on the chain of custody certification, forest certification, and the impact on workers. Koirul Anam, the president of Kahutindo, says, "From regulatory aspects, the forestry sector must acquire priority support for required policies. The prospect of job creation to 4 million workers post-forestry industrial revitalization must guarantee the welfare of workers covered by regulation and social security, a balance of employment creation and decent work and living conditions, improvement of education, adjusting to the industrial needs through skills, competence, enhancement of potential workers, and boost the process towards a just and fair industrial relations." The Nepalese Trade Union Congress Independent, NTUCI, with the support of Sustain Labour, has been working on a campaign for workers from the forestry and agricultural sector to tackle climate change and deforestation. Between 119 million and 1.42 billion people all over the world depend, to some extent, on forests for the resources and services they provide. But forestry workers are often poorly paid and work in difficult conditions. Nepalese workers and their trade unions are committed to fighting climate change by protecting Nepal's beautiful forests and livelihoods, undertaking concrete actions to reduce deforestation. For over 30 years, Nepalese communities have been working hard to manage their forests and to help protect the environment. One of our planet's largest remaining rainforests is under threat from changes to the laws that govern forest protection in Brazil. The new forest code being proposed severely weakens protections for the Amazon rainforest and opens up vast areas to destruction, which would contribute to accelerating climate change. Right now, the only thing standing between the Amazon rainforest and destruction is Brazilian President Dilma. She can protect the Amazon by vetoing this new forest code. CUT Brazil is campaigning together with many Brazilian organizations asking President Dilma to impose a veto on this new code. Arthur Henriques, president of CUT Brazil, says, "The new forest code ignores environmental protection that is a prerequisite for a sustainable development together with social justice. We recognize the need to reform the current code, but not in this way. In the last 10 years, the Brazilian society has advanced in social and environmental agenda. Unfortunately, in rio+20, the Brazilian parliamentarians are making clear their lack of commitment to the environment. Vita Dilma." In India, the Self-Employed Women's Association, SIWA, has brought together over 1 million women toiling in the informal sector and is already putting into practice each and every element of a sustainable economy. Rimambe Navatvati, Director of Economic and Rural Development, SIWA, says, "The poor are the most green because they have to innovate coping strategies day in and day out for their survival with whatever meagre resources they have available in their surroundings. I think they have the best of the strategies for green livelihoods." One example of SIWA's bottom-up approach to climate change has been the introduction of simple-to-run biogas stoves in rural areas, some of the poorest areas in India. Kantaben Thakur is a 27-year-old mother of 3 living in a central Natupura village in Gujarat. The stoves use cow manure to create gas, reducing the rate of deforestation for firewood. She now uses the slurry from the biogas stove as an organic fertilizer, and the improvement in her cotton yields are a huge bonus for her family and the environment. SIWA markets the product of organic farms, creating over 30,000 jobs and turning the fight against climate change into an opportunity for its members. At the Congress of the Trade Union Congress of the Americas last month, there was a discussion on the trade union involvement and position on the rio+20 summit. From reducing emissions in the workplace to reducing emissions on the way to work, Spanish unions are promoting sustainable mobility by providing information on bus schedules and carpooling opportunities, amongst others. They are advocating for the construction of new metro lines to improve access to industrial sites. Lorenz Serrano from Spanish Confederation CCOO says, "Sustainable transport is what uses the least amount of energy per person being transported, and that has the least impact on the environment. At the same time, it has to be useful for the society. It has to guarantee the rights of those most vulnerable so that those with less options also have access to public transport." The global union IUF has been working on the flour industry in Africa. The flour industry in East Africa is a heavy user of pesticides that affect workers' health. Industry giants like Kiliflora employ over 1,000 people to satisfy the constant European demand for roses. Yaya Msangi from ITUC Africa says, "We have witnessed the shifting of flour cultivation from Europe to Africa, and this is due to the environment, low labour costs, less regulation, so a lot of people have moved their production to Africa." CTA Argentina has been involved in getting workers, social movements and politicians to reach a consensus about wealth redistribution and to discuss their views on life, humanity and nature as part of the preparations for the rio+20 summit. The strength of the labour movement is not only in its roots, but also in its capacity to bring workers' ideas to the international level. In the last 5 years, the position of the labour movement on climate change has become clear. There is no such thing like a job-safe world if climate change is not tackled, and this requires every government doing its fair share of effort. The International Trade Union Confederation, its partners and affiliates are mobilised to make the world understand that reducing emissions in the developed world is our responsibility, and it is not a job killer. That entering a low-carbon development is also an opportunity for emerging economies which can avoid taking the same development pathway. That we need an ambitious strategy to accompany workers in this huge transformation, a just transition. Today, the world's union movement rallies behind an ambitious call for binding targets in the developed world, ambitious action in the South, solid funding, and just transition strategies. Unions can make a difference and make this happen.